Hello there. How are you today? Hope you're good. Um, Hannah's still in quarantine. Uh, Apparently, Jackie's a teacher, so she's okay. Um, I was a wee bit concerned, in as much as I was concerned. So this, I'm trying to kind of cut back in things. But you see, when you get into all this kind of stuff, when it gets really, really frustrating, one of the things you realise is it would be quite nice to find somebody to blame for this. Um, so obviously, some people blame China, but not just in the sense of you have wet markets and it's a kind of breeding ground for these kind of viruses. Sometimes people will blame China in the sense they have taken this virus and weaponized it and made it into a bioweapon. We have people in Britain who have started suggesting it's not the virus that's causing all these problems, or alternatively, it's not a natural spread of the virus. Um, the illnesses that are happening because of this virus, it's because of the new 5G network that's being put up across the country, and we have to militate against this particular technology. Various masts have been burnt at various points, and um, various um, not parades, demonstrations against the 5G network have happened in Britain already. But this need to blame somebody. I mean, obviously, some people blame God because we have a greater degree of atheism in our society, and therefore people have the right to blame whoever they want. Um, One of the things that recognised one of the holidays where we did get on a plane and did make it there and back, we went to Jackie, Hannah, and myself went to Lisbon in Portugal, and I think it's 1759. I can't remember. I think it's the 1700s. There was an earthquake off the coast. At least the epicenter was off the coast of Portugal, and the earthquake destroyed a substantial portion of Lisbon. Then, because it was out at the ocean, it created a tsunami. So the earthquake destroyed a huge portion of Lisbon. Then the tsunami came in and destroyed even more. And then, about 3 or 4 days later, fire uh, basically took hold, and even more people were killed because of the fire. And obviously, in that situation, people didn't blame God, they blamed themselves. They had done something that God hadn't wanted they would do. And as a consequence, they got all the Jews, presumably all the Jews who were still alive, and that couldn't have been many, took them outside the walled city uh, of Lisbon and crucified them. Because obviously, that's what you do when you have a major calamity. People need someone to blame. And the danger is we should be very wary of thinking other people will fall for these silly theories, but we won't because we're too sensible. Why is it people so often pick Jewish people? I mean, to be fair, there are lots of people who are being blamed for the coronavirus. Um, Chinese government spokesman set off a real media frenzy in China when he tweeted that it was the US Army that had brought the epidemic to Wuhan. Russian media then took up that story, both so that the virus had been created by the United States and the United Kingdom. Did you know it was your fault as well? Um, Basically, to develop the virus and to harm Russia and China. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard claimed that the virus was an American biological weapon aimed at both China and Iran, while Iran state media also claimed that the Zionists were part of this whole conspiracy too. We really like having someone to blame. It's good. You feel better. As I said before, the vast majority of viruses do things like break down things in the soil. Viruses do an immense amount of good, and the vast majority of viruses are really, really helpful. But this virus, like any virus, not only brings out the best in people, it not only brings out the sacrificial nature of people who, as doctors and nurses, sometimes just key workers who keep on going when others stop, it also brings out the worst in people as well. There's always someone to blame. Everybody from, well, the people we've already been, the governments and countries we've already talked about, but there's also, Bill Gates, George Soros. They are incredibly adept individuals because they get blamed for everything. The thing is, Jews get it in the neck more than most. The danger for the Jews during pandemic is not just the disease. They get the disease, but they get other things as well. One of the greatest catastrophes to afflict the human race was the 14th century bubonic plague, the Black Death, and it swept through Europe. Some places it was only 30 or 40%. Some places it was 50%. Some places it was, in certain parts of Mediterranean Europe, it was well over 70%. And the Jewish minority was always scapegoated. The irony being, because they were Jews, they weren't allowed to mix in the general population. In other words, they were usually in their own separate. When you're being nice, you call it enclave. When you're being honest, you call it ghetto. And between being separated and usually walled off as a community, and also because they had dietary laws and had very specific food kind of preparations, which kind of stopped them doing eating the same foods that other people did, then they tended to be separate from the population, and therefore less Jews died of the Black Death. The problem being is that then was used as evidence to prove they're to blame. When you hear the stuff on TV, you should never be dismissive of it, because this kind of idiocy, this kind of just stupidity, this human need to blame somebody invariably is taken on by some, and it produces anger, and anger quickly moves to words, and inflammatory and dangerous inciting words leads to action and violence and death. It's therefore our responsibility, if anybody suggests that there is some individual, some country, some faith that has caused this. This is caused by human greed. Wet markets should be banned, as in animals brought alive to a market for sale, all stacked up on top of one another. Scared animals, stressed animals, they tend to defecate on top of one another, and things mutate because the body is getting rid of all the toxins, because it's ready for flight, it's ready to run, because they're being caged and brought into this place for slaughter. That is where this essential human petri dish created the virus that we now have. The problem is, in the same way as in this country we need to flatten the curve as far as the coronavirus spread is concerned, we have to do the same with the kind of attitudes and the theories that spout out rubbish about who's to blame. It's a deadly virus that poisons hearts. i.e., things like anti-Semitism, anti-Chinese sentiment, it is not as deadly as the virus, the coronavirus, but be clear, people die of it because this kind of anti-Semitism, anti-Chinese idea, it's much harder to get a vaccine. I don't know who you would be dealing with. Maybe you don't see anybody, so in that sense, it's not an issue. But see, when you actually get people who mouth off against various people and groups and countries as to say who's to blame for this, it would be good if we actually said what the reality is. And the reality is, viruses are good for the vast majority, but they mutate, and they especially mutate when human greed is put first over animal husbandry and human safety. That's what created this. Anybody says different, they're talking stuff that's wrong. Can we please try and take a stand against this? Because it just seems to be so common. You have the disaster and you need to blame somebody, usually the Jews. It's horrible. It's also stupid. Go with God, because I know God goes with you. Bye.